Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today we're going to be doing a review on the Retroid Pocket Flip 2. Now, just right off the bat, as to what's special about this device, and you probably already saw it right there, but it is a clamshell form factor, which you don't see a lot of in this hobby. But what's special about this is it can play Nintendo 3DS, GameCube, PlayStation 2, even some Nintendo Switch. Basically, if you're familiar at all with the Retroid Pocket 5, that is this in a different form factor. So all of the videos that show what the Retroid Pocket 5 can do, which is a bunch of stuff that I've done, full showcases on a lot of different systems, all of that is in a smaller-ish form factor. Now also, throw in an AMOLED screen, throw in offset controls, throw in a smaller form factor, and put a price of $229 US, which you can get from Retroid's website, and you have the current best, or at least most powerful, clamshell from Android that you can purchase. But it's not without its problems, it's not without its cons. We're going to talk about those as well, and we're also going to talk about if this is the right fit for me at the end, as opposed to everybody else. We'll talk about that later. So let's dive right in and let's take a quick look at the specs of this device. Now, I said it before, but if you're familiar enough with the Retroid Pocket 5, this is all the same, except it's a clamshell form factor. So we are using the same Snapdragon 865 processor, which we talked about earlier, performance-wise, and aside from Switch emulation, it is essentially perfect for current Android emulation. Snapdragon just comes out way ahead compared to Dimensity chips, and it is great to have it here again. Snapdragon also gets you Windows emulation, proper HD texture pack support with DDS files, and so much more. There is really no negative to Snapdragon. There is the usual suspects of 8GB of RAM, Android 13, 5000 mAh battery, which we'll talk about later, and so on. Now, one point to mention, this unfortunately only has 128GB of internal storage. And I know for many of you that is going to be more than fine. But you should be aware of the use cases where that's going to be a problem, especially if you want to do certain things. For example, Android games have to be put on the internal storage, and those can be 20 to 30GB each, especially for the popular ones. HD texture packs for both GameCube and PlayStation 2 have to be put on the internal storage as well. And lastly, if you don't have your Nintendo Switch games combined with the DLC and updates all in one, you have to install the DLC and updates to your internal storage. So those are a few different things that take up that internal storage and why it's kind of not that great to have 128 right now, but it's unfortunate. Everything else can be put on an SD card, of course, but just be aware of the limitations of 128GB of storage. Although there isn't really anything you can do about it anyways, because there is no model up to go to, so you're kind of stuck with it, even if it is a problem. Taking a look at the actual handheld, and the first thing that you're going to realize if you don't have a Flip 1 is the size. It is a lot smaller than expected, which is basically the whole selling point of clamshells and why they're great. Small size, protected with a built-in case, and you can throw it around anywhere and it's all fine. Happy to report that at the very least with the GameCube colored retail unit that I have here, the plastic feels very good, and it feels normal for pretty much every device. This all feels sturdy, and it's good. Now, I can't make any comments on any other colors because my experience with any other color was my ice blue engineering sample, and that did not feel as sturdy as this does. So it could be an engineering sample fault, could be a color fault with it being transparent. I have no idea, I can't really say. So at least from my point of view, I am only going to recommend solid colors because I feel like that's the right choice here. But if you want to go with a different color, you're risking it. I can't make that decision for you just because I haven't tested it. I will say in comparison, the GameCube color that I have here has none of the issues that I had with the ice blue engineering sample that I had. It is not creaky, it is not unsturdy or not sturdy. It has no problems of plastic of any sort, which is great because that was a big issue that I had. Now, the design on top of this is still super unfortunate. I still do not like this design. It's actually gotten worse over time because the more I look at it, I'm like, what even are you trying to do with this? Are you going for a Pac-Man logo? Are you going for a hinge being half open? I don't know what they're trying to say with this hinge design. And I know there's a lot of people that are probably going to try and cover it up with stickers. The unfortunate part about that is it is raised, and then part of it is a different texture. So I'm not sure what you can do there, but like it's super ugly compared to the Flip 1, which just had a Retroid logo and it was nice and smooth, minus the text part. But this is peak clamshell right here. We'll talk about that later. Now, just quickly, this isn't a large nitpick, but this might be one of the worst SD card reader trays or door or whatever you want to call it that I've ever seen. First, you struggle to actually open the door of it, but then it is so short that you can barely get the SD card in, which as usual does require something to pop in and out. So I usually use a second SD card to pop it in and out. That's normal for most of these handhelds, but that little door and having to hold it open is just the worst feeling ever. They could have just made it a little bit longer for that little ribbon thing that holds it together. I don't know why they didn't, but yeah, it sucks. Thankfully, you only have to do this once when you're putting in the SD card because you can just wirelessly transfer everything else. Continuing on to the controls, and I am a big fan of this layout scheme. It is very comfortable, at least the layout is. We'll talk a bit about the comfort later, but it is much better than the Retroid Pocket 5, thanks to the offset controls, and where I struggled with stick-heavy games on the Retroid Pocket 5 over my time using it, I don't have that problem here. In fact, even playing something like Call of Duty just streamed felt good to me. Just ignore all of the dying I do. I find the inset sticks to actually be really good here. They're enjoyable, and they're grippy, and they have a different stick cap that do make them a little bit more grippy, which is good. The D-pad and the buttons feel roughly the same as the Retroid Pocket 5 from what I can tell, and overall these are pretty great. Noise-wise, they do sound the same as well. I didn't really notice a difference from the Flip 2 to the Retroid Pocket 5 on a noise perspective. Now, one thing that I do wish they did differently was just make them bigger. They have so much room to use here for buttons or D-pad and all of that. I wish they could have just used like the Odin 2 Portals D-pad and buttons, since we know that they're kind of sort of the same company in some sort of way, or using the same designers and same factory or whatever it is. It doesn't matter, but either way, I wish they would have done that because you have so much room all around here to just make it a little bit bigger. And I'm sure they're probably cramming in some things here, so that's probably why they can't. But this device, out of most devices that I've used, really made it stick out that these are really small for the size. I'm also pretty disappointed in the lack of M1 and M2 buttons like the Flip 1 had. Those were super useful for a lot of different things, and they are gone here on the Flip 2. The power button is also in the most unfortunate of spots, right next to the home back combo button, and I found myself pushing that power button instead of home back a lot of different times. No personal issues with the home back being a single button. That's always worked well for me. I don't really have an issue with that. Personally, I use L3 as my hotkey enable button in all of my emulators, so you shouldn't be using home or back as a hotkey enable button anyways. Didn't really affect me. Now on the back is the shoulders and triggers, and the shoulders themselves are nice and clicky and loud if you care about that sort of thing, but they feel good to push down. But the triggers are unfortunate, and we'll talk about that now along with total comfort. So my main problem with the triggers is how they are sloped. With how you naturally hold the device, the trigger's highest points are at the sides of the device, meaning that you feel a tall part and then it slopes downwards towards the middle of the device. It leads to your fingers doing some sort of weird curving around it, and it doesn't feel great. It is extremely not ergonomic and it is uncomfortable. They should have just curved them or sloped them upwards towards the center, or really anything besides what they did here. Take a quick look at the Flip 1 and how they did them there, then look at the Flip 2 and you can tell that something's not right. I find myself having to hold the device differently than I want to, in a more uncomfortable position because of the triggers, and this even for just hotkey usage. Never mind using them for actual shooting or gaming, where it kind of feels a little bit worse to me. And that sort of ties into my overall thoughts around the ergonomics, the comfort of the device as a whole. Now, I mentioned earlier that the actual layout of the offset sticks and everything feels great, and it does. But it's the rest of the handheld that doesn't to me. The blocky nature of it with my hands, and I don't have large hands, so this is probably part of the problem, it is very, very uncomfortable. Whereas in comparison, when I have a Flip 1 here, which is nice and curved and not as blocky, it's also not as tall, it's actually very different, This feels beautiful to me. I love this and how this feels. And one of the main complaints that I have over the time that I've been using the Flip 2 is how much it does not feel comfortable to me in a lot of different scenarios. When I first did my live stream, I was here at my desk and I had something behind it to support it. And it gave me the wrong feeling of comfort and ergonomics that over time, as I used it in different scenarios of just lying down or holding it in my hands upright like this, in different scenarios where I did not have something behind it, I had big trouble with just comfort and ergonomics on this. And again, it could just be the size of my hands. They are not large hands, but it's really a tough thing for me to get over. I've tried a lot of different things to see if I can get comfortable with this, trying not to really hold it like a baby cradling it, or just holding it closer, or switching up positions and all of that. But this is probably my biggest deal breaker of the day, is I cannot get comfortable with this, even for a device that is just meant to be a portable on-the-go option for me for just occasional use here and there. The Flip 1 ends up being a better scenario for me. So I just want to recap this to make it super clear for everybody. I personally think the layout, the design of all of it is great. I love this design here. But the blocky nature of it in comparison to the Flip 1, which is curved and better, doesn't work for me, unfortunately. Now, just quickly on the Hinge, I can't talk about long-term reliability. I could sit and do this all day long, but it doesn't really tell me much. Unfortunately, that's going to be something that we have to keep an eye on for the next few months to see how this holds up. I will say that nothing really has given me pause or worry with this Hinge, but I didn't have that worry either on the original Flip 1 too. So I don't know what the answer is here. This is a Flip 1 version 1 with the old Hinge, and this is the Flip 2, and to me, they both feel fine. So again, this is a long-term thing. I don't know what the answer is going to be if this holds up. Now, like the Retroid Pocket 5, this is using the same gorgeous 5.5-inch AMOLED 1080p 60Hz screen. It is a great screen in every way. The brightness slider has the proper ranges for lowest to highest. It's essentially exactly 60 Hz when testing the refresh rate, and there's no weird discoloration at any percentages. For those that worry about PWM dimming, this actually uses DC dimming instead, which is a pro to anybody that's susceptible to that. Now, for those of you that have not used a Flip 1, it's not a major problem, but you will find yourself sometimes having to swipe down multiple times because your finger will touch the lip of the device, the top of it, and it won't bring down the top menu in a lot of scenarios. This doesn't happen all the time. It's one of those weird things that just because it's a clamshell and you have to swipe down, it could just affect you, but it's a little nitpick and not really something to worry about. Otherwise, the entire screen is just gorgeous. No complaints at all for this price especially, and what you're getting. Now, on the battery front, I did a few tests, as I usually do, and the results were pretty much exactly the same as my Retroid Pocket 5 review. Battery life is fantastic here, which should not be a shock to anybody at all, and nothing stands out as a problem or an issue, at least with the tests that I did, and the time that I've been using it. Over 10 hours for Game Boy Advance is fantastic in every way. But let's talk about sound and audio now, because this is where my second biggest complaint comes from. Although this one I can actually live with. I can deal with pretty bad sound because most of these devices don't really have good audio. But the Flip kind of takes it to a different level because it is very muffled, it is very underwater sounding. It basically sounds like the speakers are being thrown into the case instead of out. And they do have front-firing speakers, so it's very confusing as to what's going on here. Here is a very quick example compared to the Odin 2 Portal. The Portal has fuller, richer sound, whereas the Flip 2 is a lot more muffled, and it sounds like, or it feels like, the speakers are, again, underwater or pointing inwards or whatever you want to call it. The speakers are actually in phase. I made sure to test that. So I'm not sure exactly what's going on here, if it's just an EQ fix that they need to do, which they do need to do for the Retroid Pocket 5 as well. However, it's been 5 or 6 months since that came out and we are still waiting on that fix. So really hoping that that speaker fix on this doesn't take another 5 to 6 months either. From a sound perspective of actually using the device and how the buttons and everything sound, here's a quick clip of me playing so you can get an idea. Overall, for me personally, only the shoulder buttons are loud or can be loud. But I also don't have a problem with the Retroid Pocket 5's buttons or the Odin 2 Portal's buttons. I don't consider them loud at all. This is about the same as the Retroid Pocket 5 to me. And I think those issues are overblown, to me personally, so if you're looking for somebody to tell you if this is loud or not, I might not be the best person, considering I don't think they are. But now we get to probably my biggest deal breaker on this device, second to the ergonomics and comfort, and that is the fan on the Flip 2. Now, I talked about this for the last 3 weeks or so. I've been bringing it up every time we talk about the Flip. It was the first thing that's been apparent to me, and as I open up my device now, I can hear it right away as soon as I open it up. Basically, when the device is on quiet mode, which should be inaudible on all of my other devices, including the Odin 2 Portal, when the fan is on the lowest mode, which is quiet mode, you don't hear it. That is how it should be. But it is still doing a low RPM fan thing that it does. On this device, you have, it sounds loud, it's got a coil whine, it's got a whole bunch of that. And this has been apparent on my engineering sample as well as the retail unit, and I've confirmed it with others as well. Now, if you're not susceptible to coil whine or that ringing noise, then you probably won't hear it. But for somebody who is susceptible to it, is the first thing I hear, especially since I play muted with fast forward on. It's the first thing that I hear, and it's the only thing that I hear. And it's one of the reasons that I actually have a trouble using this device. Throughout my entire period, my review period, using this device, I wanted to put it down because I did not want to use it because of how loud and obnoxious the fan is. That is how troublesome it has been to me. Again, to me, besides the comfort and ergonomics problem, that is the second deal breaker that I have with this device. I can't use it in this state. On the software front, a lot of everything is still the same as the Retroid Pocket 5. So if you're familiar enough with that, then you'd be familiar enough with this. Retroid does not include games with their devices, so no SD card full of games, which is great. They do have an option to use their pre-configured emulators, which are all out of date. So you would want to use my setup guide to get you going here, and I have that in the description. Otherwise, everything that you want is there. You can control the stick LEDs if you want to change the colors or turn them off and so on. You can control the fan, you can control your layout from Nintendo to Xbox, and so on. Nothing special really to talk about on the software front. It's all of the things that you'd want. Now, the device does go to sleep when you do close the lid, and it'll wake up when you open it as well. And if you have a game running, it'll do it as well too. I've tested it across different emulators. For the most part, when I do have a game running in, let's say, RetroArch or Nether SX2, and I close the lid, come back in the morning, the game is still running perfectly. I can jump right in. There are some cases or some emulators where it could break, so just be aware of that. But for the most part, you'll be fine. If you want to just leave it open, close the game, and come back later, you can. Performance-wise, we talked about it before, but you are pretty well set here with optimizations and performance. Obviously, all the retro systems are going to play just fine, and perfectly. Super Nintendo, Game Boys, PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, PlayStation Portable, and so on have no issues, upscaled, all that sort of thing. You can play all those all day long. GameCube and PlayStation 2 would be a great reason to purchase this. Again, I have full videos on both systems, but minus the games that usually do have trouble being emulated, you can get away with the vast majority of each's catalog, upscaled, and little to no tweaking at all. If you want a device that you can just install Dolphin or Nether SX2, set up your controls, upscale, and click play, this is pretty much it in a lot of scenarios. And so again, there is no real reason to do a deep dive here into performance, thanks to the many videos that I've already done on this same processor. So all of that's in the description if you want to take a deeper look into what this plays. But for those of you that want pocketable PS2 and GameCube, you have that here. For those of you that want a quick thought on Retroid Pocket Flip 2 versus the Retroid Pocket 5, I don't have a good answer to this one. I don't know if either of them are my personal favorites. I think the Flip 2 comes out ahead to me in a small way, mostly because of the stick offset and how comfortable it is to use those sticks for stick-heavy games, which I found to be an issue on the Retroid Pocket 5. But other than that, I can't really answer that question, unfortunately. They are two different devices. It is tough for me to pick one, but if you put a gun to my head and you told me to answer, I'd probably just pick the Flip 2. Now, I do want to start to wrap things up here because I think we've gone a little bit far. At $229 US with no competition to speak of, yeah, this is a good option if you were looking for a clamshell, and especially an Android clamshell, because between this and the GPD Win Mini, there isn't really another option. So it's either this or you don't buy anything. And this is a really good option for a lot of people. I think this is going to be what a lot of people want from this type of device in a clamshell, pocketable PS2 and GameCube. That is all great. I think there's a lot great here. And for the average person, this is an easy recommendation for you. Now, I think if you value the speakers, I think if you value not having fan noise, I think if you value ergonomics and comfort, this might not be the best solution for you. If you had a Flip 1 and you found that to be uncomfortable, this is worse in my opinion. So I don't think you'll gain anything from making that change, although personally, ergonomics and comfort are a personal thing. So I don't know how your hands are going to react to it. If they're like mine and they can't deal with this, then it's a different scenario. So it's tough for me to put that, but at least on the speakers front and the fan noise front, then this might not be the choice for you. And so to kind of end off there for general recommendation for the public, then yeah, absolutely. This is a good device in every single way. Really, the things that aren't great here in my mind are personal things that you're going to have to decide if that bothers you or not. And so I can't really tell you yes or no. But overall, yeah, this is an easy recommendation if you're looking for a clamshell. But this changes for my personal thoughts, which we'll talk about now. So I don't know how to say this without inciting a riot of some sort, but again, remember, these are my personal thoughts for my personal use cases and all that sort of thing. But to me, the Flip 1 is a better choice, and for a lot of different reasons, but it's unfortunate. I was really looking forward to the Flip 2. A lot of people know that already. You've seen my previous videos on Flip 2, hopeful wishing. I did a whole video on what I wanted out of a Flip 2. And on paper, this is exactly what I was looking for. In reality, it is pretty much far away from what I wanted. The Flip 1, to me, is so close to perfect in so many different ways. From a comfort perspective, like this is so easy for me to just wrap my hands around. It is ergonomic and curved, all that sort of thing. It isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a lot better than the Flip 2, which is just bulky. You can see it. It is tough for me to get used to. And don't get me wrong, the Flip 2's upgrades are amazing. These are things that I would want in a Flip 1. The better screen, the better D-pad, the better buttons, the better layout, the better sticks, all of that are things that I would want, but it's the comfort and ergonomics that I cannot get over. If you could take all of that and put it in the Flip 1, I would be a very happy man, but that's not the world that we live in. So again, for me specifically, who does not need the power of this, which a lot of people are going to overlook, I think, the ergonomics and comfort of this just because of how powerful it is, but I have a portal. I have an Odin 2 portal that does all of that for me. I need a device that's just on the go and feels good on the go, which the Flip 1 is kind of it for me, unfortunately. Now, I was trying to think and putting myself in the position of, if I did not have a portal, would I have the Flip 2? The answer, unfortunately, still is no. There is no world, and actually, I'm probably never going to use this again after today. I hesitate to say that I do not like this, because again, I think it's going to incite a riot, but I just don't. It's just not for me at all. And so for me, I'm going to stick with the Flip 1 until we get to the point where somebody makes a better Flip 1, and then I'll jump over to that. But this, at the moment I got it back in my hands from not liking the Flip 2. I ordered another one of these to get it in. And yeah, I just bring back all of the memories of how good this is. And I thought it would be rose tinted glasses, but it's not. The Flip 1 to me is just better, and that's a personal opinion of mine. So again, as a final thought here, unless you are special like me and prefer the Flip 1 over the Flip 2, I think for most people the Flip 2 is going to be a better device and they're going to like it a lot more. I think it's all going to come down to the things that I mentioned already around the speakers, the fan noise, the ergonomics and comfort, but don't be put off by my personal thoughts on the two different devices. I think for most people, Flip 2 is going to be a good choice. For me, I'm still going to be waiting for a better version. That's going to be it for this one. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow. Come join me on the Discord to yell at me for not loving the Flip 2. Support me on Patreon if you like my stuff. And hope you all have a good one.